Okay, hello everybody. This is your favorite Bronze Age Spider-Man comic book podcast. Here comes the Spider-Cast. I am your co-host Mike L, and as always I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell, and today we're going to be talking about Spider-Man comics from September of 1982. We're going to start things off with the Amazing Spider-Man number 232, then we're going to move over to Marvel Team Up 121, and then finish things off with Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man number 70.
Yes, and we are going to start off with Amazing number 232 featuring a freaking amazing cover. Great day in the morning. John Romita Jr. is on a roll. What do you think of this cover here, Josh?
It's really cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah, the inking is really cool. So we have I can't remember
Mr. Hyde.
I can't remember Hyde's real name, like his alter ego.
Calvin something.
Yeah.
I will find out.
So we see him kind of in like his, I guess, Jekyll form.
Yes.
Like kind of in the background, he's drinking this potion, and then we see another image of him, and his glasses are flying off, and he's hiding his face, and then the next one, he's kind of getting bigger and like stretching his suit, and he's covering his face, and then in the foreground we have him just screaming, and like his one eye is kind of like half closed and the other is huge, and his mouth is just agape, and his hair is flying everywhere. It's really great.
So good. And we've got the spider signal on the bottom there, kind of, you know. And also I want to point out, this is definitely a Kirby-esque type of cover, but the inking, which is by Al Milgrom, it gives it sort of I would say a Joe Kubert feel. It feels very textury and close to what Frank Miller was doing at the time, but a little bit different. Yeah. This cover, again, John Romita Jr. is on a roll at this point. Like, this cover is amazing. It like explodes off the newsstand. If you saw this in a store, you would have to buy it. There's no question, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, so we open up to another great image. Now we've got John Romita Jr. inked by Jim Mooney, and like I've always said, I love Jim Mooney, but I don't think he's the best match for John Romita Jr., and you can see in the way that he kind of softens up the power of these figures. What do you think?
Yeah, I think
he's still good.
I think it's pretty good. I don't know. For me, it didn't take me out a whole lot.
Okay.
To be honest, I didn't really notice a problem with the inking, but like what were you what were you thinking specifically?
Well, it's like, it's hard to explain, but on the front cover, Al Milgrom, the way that he texturizes the inks, it also it reflects the feeling of the character, for one thing, but it also doesn't take away from the power of the figures, like the Kirby-esque figures. Whereas on the inside, we've got this great shot of Hyde, crawling sort of, hunched over the top of the roof, and he's like hunched over, and it's really cool, but he looks fine. But there's something about the way Spider-Man's inked where it's like Jim Mooney is softening up the figures just a little bit too much, and I think it takes away the power a little bit, especially with Spider-Man, like the way that it looks like very feathery, the way that he's inked like the webs in his costume and stuff like that. It's not bad. It just takes away the power a little bit, I think.
Okay.
But anyway, it's still amazing. It's an amazing opening shot, I think. It's really powerful.
It's really great. I also I love the recap that Spidey gives at the beginning. It's so it's so fast, and it sums up the entire last issue in like one bubble. It's great.
Right, I love it.
It starts off, I don't believe this. I go to all this trouble of finally capturing Cobra, and what happens? His ex-partner, Mr. Hyde, shows up with blood in his eyes, nearly smashes up a chunk of the building, and causes me to twist my ankle in the bargain. I can't win. It's great. Like, it's just like it's almost like he's summarizing the entire thing in one breath of a sentence.
Right.
Yeah.
For no one's benefit but ours, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So basically, yeah. So then this is kind of weird because Spider-Man has got the Cobra, but Mr. Hyde wants him. So Spider-Man is running away from Mr. Hyde, trying to keep Cobra away from him. But Mr. Hyde is doing everything he can to get him. So he's like ripping up this air vent and throwing it at him, and then he's gripping an electrical wire out of a roof and trying to electrocute them with it. It's really cool.
It's really great that he just like smashes the ground to rip up the electrical wires, and it's 220 volt cables, and it doesn't even affect him in the slightest. He's using it as a whip to try to hit Spider-Man. It's really great. Yeah,
freaking awesome. Yeah, and then we cut away from the action, and we cut in on this is Marla from the Daily Bugle and what's his name? Ned Leeds.
Yeah.
Right. And so they're meeting up with who is it? Lance Bannon, who we just saw. Didn't we just see him in the Treasury Edition review? I think we did. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so basically, so we cut outside, and I love this, that we see the consequences of the battle. So this building is smashed through this cab, right?
It's so great. I really, really love that. It feels so real.
Right.
Like usually with these big, like Amazing Spider-Man style fights with the villains, a lot of stuff gets destroyed and it's kind of just mayhem as they're punching each other, and then that's it. Here we really kind of see the consequence of that, even if it's just like a small thing that happens with a character we don't really know. This character almost dies because of something like the action that's happening and the chaos above the streets of New York, up on the buildings, as like, half ripped up buildings are flying around and smashing into things. And so we see this cab driver almost die because a building crushes his car, and it like just misses the cab.
Right.
Sorry, it crushes the cab, but it misses the driver's seat.
Right. Yes.
Right. So Spider-Man also takes note of that and tries to kind of limit the destruction, and realizes like, wait, why am I trying to save Cobra?
Right.
Why am I trying to save this goon? Why I should just give him exactly what he wants.
Right. It's like, here, you can have him. So he tosses them back to him, but he puts some sticky, because let's be clear, for those that don't know, Spider-Man does have different settings on his web shooter. He has like a net. He has like a rope, and then this is like his sticky webbing. So he uses it to make Mr. Hyde's hand stick to Cobra's head, right? So it's kind of funny. So then for the rest of the issue, they're stuck together. So
right,
again,
at least for a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, for a little bit. So now Spider-Man or Mr. Hyde is ripping up another chimney and throwing it at Spider-Man, and he's swinging it back at him. He's smashing it. And it's just a classic supervillain fight.
Yeah, I love that he throws the building and he webs it up and he like swings it around back at him, and he just punches it and all the bricks just go flying around him.
Right.
Really, really great. Yeah. And then sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and then of course after that, they destroy another water tower. Right, you have to, right? It's a Spidey comic. If we're on a building, we're destroying a water tower. Yep, that's the rule. He breaks this water tower, and Spider-Man kind of has to leap out of the way, and. He has to save Ned, right? Because he's on the rooftop trying to take pictures of the action that's going on, and he jumps out of the way of the water tower, but the water looks like it's about to crash, and it flies him off of the building. He goes and he webs him up real quick, and it's Lance Bannon that falls. Right, it's Ned. Lance Bannon. Yeah, Ned's on top of the building. Yeah, right. Ned grabs onto like a pole that's sticking up, and Lance gets thrown off. So Spider-Man like saves him just in the nick of time, like he barely makes it. Of course, Lance is like upset that Spider-Man didn't save the camera and starts like bad mouthing him, and Spider-Man leaves. scant minutes later, and we cut back to Lance and his mouth's all webbed up. It's great. Yeah.
Yep. I love it. Mm-hmm. So then, yeah. And then, we cut over to Mr. Hyde is still got the Cobra. And it's funny because they're sort of talking about what's gone on before, and then they get into this little argument, and then Mr. Hyde is like, your face is known to the police, you must wear disguise when you come and go. Yes, a false beard, I keep an extra in my helmet lining in case. Good. And then he just punches him in the face.
It's so
the sound
great.
effect is wud. Punches him in the face, knocks him out, drags him the rest of the way. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's really great to see like how weaselly Cobra is and how like just intimidating Hyde is. Right. Because he normally like the bad guy or the character that's being questioned would like put up a fight like I'll never tell you, and then bad guy kind of has to do something like harm him or like do something to kind of make him talk. Just immediately he's like, yep, this is the address to my building that I'm hiding in. It's like, okay, yeah, you must have a disguise to go, yep, it's in my hat, and then just thud. He drags him back to the apartment. It's so great.
I love it. Yep. So then Peter goes back to Empire State University. And, he's talking about how he gave up his teaching assistant job. And,
he goes back to his desk to pack up all his stuff.
Right. And then he crosses paths almost with Marcy, who he may or may not have had carnal knowledge of, but we're not sure. And she's trying to convince him to see something in the lab. And he's like, no, it's some other time, okay? He's pulling a Roger Stern era Peter Parker. He's like, I got to get out of here. Peter, wait, you don't, Peter, and then he's gone. But guess what? They were planning a good luck Peter, going away party for him. So we've got Marcy, we've got his other buddies, and of course, poor Deborah Whitman, right?
Yeah.
Who still suspects that Peter is Spider-Man, and she's pretty sure at this point, if not 100% sure.
Right, and she's nervous, right? That
but he's in danger, right?
Right, because she knows why he's avoiding them and like trying to run off.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah.
So then we cut over to Mr. Hyde and Cobra sneaking back into Cobra's building, but of course Mr. Hyde is in his Calvin Zabo identity, and so he looks like a normal guy, and so he's pretending we haven't seen each other in some time, and well, I'm afraid he just had too much to drink. So again, his hand is still stuck to Cobra, so he's got to pretend to be carrying him, right? Mm-hmm. And so then they go back up to the apartment, and the first thing he does is take some of his potion and turn back into Mr. Hyde, which is another pretty cool sequence, right? Where we see his face up close and stuff, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, his eyes are all like red and veiny, and yeah, it's really cool. And then
go ahead. Yep.
I was gonna say, it's really great that he uses some of Cobra's like acid,
right?
That he's got concentrated acid to melt the webs off. But it like burns Mr. Hyde's hand more than it burns the webbing. But he doesn't really even flinch. He just kind of goes blast. It's more effect on my hand than it is the webbing. And then he rips his hand off of Cobra and then just kind of puts his hand into a fist, and the web kind of just oozes off, and his hand is smoking from the acid.
Right, it's so cool.
Yeah, it's so great.
And like the dialogue is great. It's like, coming to Cobra, good. I want you conscious for this. Hyde, what are you doing to me? I don't know. It's just funny how tough he is, and it's just it's a little bit funny, but it's just really, I don't know, a great characterization here. I think.
Sure,
it's awesome. Yep.
Yeah. So then he ties up Cobra in these like crazy like cuffs, I guess. He like hog ties him almost, and then rips off the fake beard just as Spider-Man crashes through the window and starts punching and fighting Mr. Hyde.
Right.
And there's some really great panels on original 8 and digital digital 19, original 18.
Yes.
So we the first panel we have Spider-Man on the wall just as he comes in and kicks Mr. Hyde. He kind of ricochets and goes under the wall. And I love that he has his ankle webbed up. Did you notice that?
Yes.
I love
no,
that.
I did notice that. Yeah.
That's so great. Because he had mentioned briefly before that he twisted his ankle up on the rooftop in their first encounter. So yeah, he's all webbed up now and ready to fight. And Mr. Hyde charges at him and he bashes into the wall. Then we have this like one panel where we have like 3 different Mr. Hydes and 4 different Spider-Man, kind of like transparent almost to show that there's movement.
Right.
And Mr. Hyde is just like frantically punching and Spider-Man is like gracefully jumping up and dodging him, and it's just enraging him. And then that last panel on the page is like this kind of like this profile shot, and it's an extreme close-up of Mr. Hyde's mouth. Yes. And he's just screaming, I'll kill you.
Right.
And like it's not even in a word bubble. It's just like these giant red block lettering that's coming out of his mouth. It's great.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And then basically the fight comes to an end with Spider-Man punching him in the back of the head and then webbing up his face.
Right. He flings him off a building, and that's enough to knock him out. Right. Like this probably like, 100-story building.
I know, like it's ridiculous, huge. But I love it. I love it.
And we know that he's alive because he kind of stands up and then stumbles and falls down unconscious. So
right.
Then we cut to Cobra, which is such a crazy moment. To escape the chains, like the cuffs that he's in, he has to rip off his costume, but then he also he says he had to rip free of my costume and lose a few inches of skin.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
But at last I'm free. Like it's so gross, and it's kind of graphic. Like there's blood dripping off his arm, and like his whole like forearm is bloody because he had to like literally take off skin. Like I was so surprised when reading that, because this is kind of like a fun, like lighthearted, campy story. So when I saw that, I was like, whoa, that took me aback. But it also makes sense too, because he's the Cobra, right? Like snakes shed their skin, so it was also kind of like fitting for his character. And I'm wondering if that's kind of part of his power set. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know, to be honest.
But I thought that was pretty interesting. So yeah, he's trying to sneak away, then Spider-Man stops him, and then he turns around to the police as they barge in and just says, "Please take me away, lock me up. I just can't take any more of this."
Yeah,
so
it's
great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, again, it's a nice little ending. This is not a substantial story, but I think it's so much fun that I really enjoyed it, as usual, right? What about you?
Yeah, no, it was really great. Again, it was just kind of like a small little story. It wasn't trying to be too complex. It was just, again, there to tell the story it wanted to tell, and then that was it. And I think they really wrote it really well, and then the art really lended to it. So it's a definite recommend for me.
Right, absolutely. Definitely recommended. Definitely a recommendation for me as well. So that brings us to Marvel Team Up. Marvel Team Up number, what is it? Number
70.
121.
Oh, sorry. That's sorry. 70 is spectacular.
Right.
This week. Yeah.
Marvel Team Up with Spider-Man and the Human Torch. So do you want to talk about this one, Josh? Start with the cover.
This cover, I think it's pretty cool. We have Speed Demon like zipping through the shot. It's really cool. We kind of get him in the background, and then like a couple of him in the foreground. It's just like showing how fast he's moving. We have these onlookers kind of in shock as Spider-Man is holding up the Human Torch's body as his flames are just kind of slowly going out. I think it's a pretty cool like cover, but for some reason these bubbles are so weird to me. I was so like almost off put by them. I was like, what? Why did they do this?
Yeah, they've got arms coming out of them, and it's just a little bit too much, because even though it's a pretty busy cover, the composition's great, right?
Yeah.
Like we have Spider-Man and Human Torch in the foreground. We have Speed Demon running towards them, but then we have whoever they are on the right there.
Mm-hmm.
But the composition, it's a nice triangle, right? Like Spider-Man and Human Torch in the foreground. They're all in the background. The buildings are not the greatest. Like they probably could have been simplified by leaving out the cross-hatching, but
Yeah.
But other than that, I think it's a pretty good cover. But you're right. Yeah, we could probably lose all that text.
Yeah, I think it's just weird. Like, so the first bubble says this is the Speed Demon. He's about to run all over Spider-Man and the Human Torch. And then there's like, instead of just like the point
right
of like a word bubble or even just having it a box, they have like an arm and a hand pointing to Speed Demon. And then only this mystery hero can save them. And then it's pointing to like this green silhouette peeking around the corner. So it's just like, I don't know. I don't know if it's really needed. I just felt like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, most of the text from this time period I could do without. You know,
True.
Like, it's not great. So
right.
It's kind of just par for the course, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we can jump into the story now. So tell us what's going on here.
Right. So we are introduced to the Human Torch as he's flying around New York, and he sees these guys robbing a liquor store, I believe it is.
Yes.
And as he kind of lands on the building to stop them, he hears Spider-Man shout at them, and the two of them stop these guys. They split up as Spider-Man and Human Torch are kind of like quipping back and forth and having a little bit of banter. It's some pretty fun stuff. And the Human Torch and Spider-Man split up to catch the two guys, or the group of guys as they split up. And as they're returning the money back to the owner of the store, the Speed Demon comes and steals it. And the Human Torch is kind of a little too ready and eager and flies off to go try to stop Speed Demon, but Spider-Man knows like Speed Demon isn't really somebody to mess with. Like he's extremely fast and it's hard to kind of catch up with him, so he goes off with Human Torch. And as we look back at the crowd, we see these this guy kind of getting angry and upset about these costumed heroes, and he starts making a big scene, and his dad is trying to calm him down. And we learn that it is Leapfrog.
Yes.
I can't remember his real name. I should have written it down.
Vincent Patillo.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, we don't really know why he's upset at right off the bat, but when him and his son go home, he kind of retells the tale of Leapfrog, and how he was an inventor and none of his inventions really made him any money, so he decided to make his own supervillain costume, and he made these like springing boots and made this like Muppet-esque frog costume, and it was stopped by Daredevil and kind of gave up his villain life a long time ago, and he's trying to make enough money to support his son after he's out of jail and his wife has just passed away. So he's really down on his luck, and we kind of see him almost losing it a little bit.
Right.
He gets all caught up in the backstory, and when his son tries to console him, he like slaps him, backhands him.
It's pretty rough.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to kind of read. I get not super hard. It's not too graphic, but it was just kind of like jarring, I guess. And this son decides that he's gonna steal the Leapfrog costume and go try to be a hero as Leapfrog rather than being a villain, to show his dad that he's created something great, which I think that's a really cool origin for a superhero.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm not sure how great of a superhero Leapfrog is. I don't think he's really going to be showing up a whole lot more, but...
although I can definitely confirm he comes back because I've come across him in a later story.
Right.
When I was a kid, I did. So, and this is definitely the type of Spider-Man 80s Spider-Man story that I'm used to. Like, the whole premise is ridiculous, right?
Yeah,
like, I don't know
really
if
ridiculous.
Leapfrog... Yeah, I don't know if he was ever intended to be a serious character, but clearly from the story, I mean, he's treated as a joke, which is kind of funny, right?
I think that they could totally make him a serious character, though. I honestly think that it's the design of the costume that makes it goofy.
Right, yeah, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. He doesn't have to be serious, but yeah.
Yeah, because I'm fine with it too. Like, I really love some of these like goofy villains that Spider-Man just kind of like tosses aside each issue, and they're not really a big deal in the long run.
Right.
But if they wanted to make him serious, they totally could. Because I think a lot of Spider-Man's villains are very like animal based, and it's like they could easily make the Scorpion like a ridiculous looking super villain, but he's very intimidating at times.
Right.
Same with Dr. Octopus. Like, imagine if they had made Dr. Octopus as literal as they made Leapfrog. Yes. Right, with the costumes. Like, it could be absolutely insane, but
yeah, and that's the thing, is sometimes they do make Dr. Octopus too campy, but then sometimes they do him right, I think, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so then Leapfrog basically just starts leaping around the city, and we can see people kind of like, watch out, you maniac, cripes, he's gonna trample me. Like, people have no idea what the heck is going on.
Right.
Spider-Man and Human Torch are still kind of, bantering back and forth, and then Speed Demon's back, right? And then what happens after that?
I was just gonna say real quick, there's a line that stuck out to me as Leapfrog is like jumping around, like kind of out of control. We see these two guys standing up against a building, and the guy goes,
"Oh, right.
Looky there, Wally. It's that Kermit fella from TV." And his friend's response is, "You've been nipping the sauce again, Ricky."
It's hilarious. I love it.
So as they're running after Speed Demon, we see Speed Demon kind of like swirl around in a vortex and almost like a tornado, and it swoops up Human Torch and puts out his flames, and he falls to the ground, which I guess wouldn't that make his flame stronger?
Well,
it's comic book stuff. I just figured
to an extent, you're right. Yeah. It's like anything. It's like you can when you blow on fire, you can either blow it out or you can fan the flame. Depending on how hard you blow. So I guess that's what they're thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a cool idea.
So Human Torch gets back up and he's trying to blast him, but Speed Demon is just going way too fast. Spider-Man says something like, I've experienced battling Speed Demon before. I can handle this. I'm the one who's going to nail him. And as he tries to web him, Speed Demon runs out of the way and he webs this bystander right in the face.
Yes.
It's really great. And then at the bottom of page digital 13, I really like this panel. It's like this long panel. The city is all blue and all three heroes are in red. Like just solid red. Speed Demon is running away and kind of blast right through some bystanders, and they're like, this guy's suitcase is flying out of his hand, a briefcase, and his hat is in the air, and this girl's hair is like blowing in the wind, and the newspapers are flying everywhere, and even like the street post, like the street that they're on is a one-way street, and the arrow is like pointing in the direction of Speed Demon, and like everything just pops in this completely blue panel besides the characters. Like, they really kind of stand out. I thought it was, I don't know. Well, it stands out to me.
Well, for me, to be honest, to me it just looks lazy. I know that they cut a lot of corners with coloring and in cases like this, and I felt like, to be honest, I would have rather just seen like the natural colors of the building. Like, you can see above, the buildings are green, and orange, and then all of a sudden it's all blue. Like, I know that sometimes they do it for effect, but I felt like here was just a rush job. But I guess it does still work. Yeah. So, and you know what's funny? As far as the art, I really like the next page, which is original page. Oh, I don't know, it doesn't say, but page 14. Like the shot of Leapfrog at the top left and the bottom left are excellent poses. Like the way that he's kind of like fumbling around as he's leaping. I think those are great.
Yeah, I think some of the poses kind of remind me of Spider-Man too. Like, the way that Spider-Man sits a lot of the times kind of looks like a frog. So it kind of almost pays homage to that, but because he is just a kid and doesn't really know what he's doing with this costume, he hasn't really used it a whole lot. He's flopping around with it, so it's almost like if Spider-Man was doing these poses for the first time. So there's some really fun stuff in here.
And it's funny because so then he touches down next to a this older woman, and he's like, he rescues them he rescues her from some muggers. And he's like, "Not to worry, madam. I've sent those rascals running. Please spare me your words of thanks." Then of course she smashes him in the head with a bag of groceries. Right?
Fantastic.
You call me, you prevert. I don't know why she calls him a prevert. I don't know if it's like an old joke or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty funny. So then he basically just keeps on leaping, right? Leaping through the city, leaping on a cop car. Meanwhile, Human Torch and Spidey are still chasing Speed Demon around, and he's just making mincemeat of them as they go, right?
Right, and he's got like just more and more and more stuff as he's going. Like he's robbing places as he's running away from them. It's great.
Right. He's so arrogant, right? But he just keeps getting away with it. They just can't catch him. I think that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And
so yes, Spider-Man tries to outsmart him and webs up a pole in a building to kind of stop him, like this huge net, and he just breaks right through. And Human Torch tries to like blast off and go just as fast as him, and he like goes right through a Michelin tire truck as Speed Demon like swings around a pole to stop himself from flying into the truck. It's really great. And then Speed Demon tries to get away by punching the ground and breaking these rocks, and starts throwing them at Spider-Man and Human Torch. And Human Torch is hit by one and falls to the ground. Spider-Man saves him, and that's when Speed Demon says, "You know what? This is where I'm going to get them." Now that he's down and trying to help his friend, he runs towards him, and Spider-Man lifts up, I guess, this panel that's on the road. Like maybe there's
I don't know, it's like a.
It looks like maybe a subway maintenance gate or something like that. So he lifts it up, and Spidey almost uses it as a ramp to shoot Speed Demon into a nearby building. Right. So that's pretty cool.
Right, and then Speed Demon comes back, makes his way back down. Now he's using garbage can lids to like swing them at Spider-Man. And now everyone's together because now finally Leapfrog intervenes like into this scene, right? So now he's kind of in on the action as well. And he's like, if only I can get in there and put the kibosh on Speed Demon right in front of those two and the cops that are after me. So like now he's trying to make a name for himself, right? And so he's doing his best, but he doesn't quite work out the way he planned, right?
Right. Yeah, he jumps in, and his dad kind of shouts for him from the crowd, and he slips. And as that happens, we see he lands on like a canopy and is kind of knocked out for a couple of seconds. Right. Human Torch tries to blast Speed Demon, but he ends up blasting a fire hydrant, which like blasts him and puts his flames out. Right. So then we jump back to Leapfrog, and he's gonna shut down the power pack. And when he does, he switches on the wrong switch, which I guess kind of turns it into like turbo mode, and he starts bouncing everywhere, like off of buildings, almost as fast as Speed Demon is running, and he lands right on top of Speed Demon, kind of crushing him. Right. And accidentally saves the day.
So yeah, total comedy slapstick ending, which is fine because that's been the tone of the whole issue, right? So again, this reminds me a lot of like I didn't read this comic as a kid, but this reminds me of the tone of a lot of the Spider-Man comics I read in the 80s. So yeah, I think it fits right in. And like we've been saying, clearly things have improved since Kerry Gamble's taken over as artist. And again,
sure.
I never really liked him as a kid, but he's just knocking it out of the park here. I think it's great. You know? It's like, it's not like, I would never take one of these panels and put it up my wall, but the storytelling is great. As we said earlier, some of the figures are really good, and it's just a lot of fun. You know, it's classic Spidey.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of camp in it. And again, maybe it's just because a lot of the Marvel team-ups have been stinkers, but I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, me too.
And I would probably recommend it too. Like it's a pretty good example of like some just fun Marvel crossover team-ups. So
absolutely, yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I recommend this one as well. So now that takes us to Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man number 70, which wraps up the Cloak and Dagger Silvermane story.
Right. So last issue we see that Dagger kills Silvermane. But at the start of this one, the Silvermane kind of comes back and he has this this cyborg body, and he's kind of like wrecking havoc again. And again, I guess it's almost like a little bit of a repeat from last issue. Like Spider-Man is trying to stop Cloak and Dagger from killing Silvermane, and they have to kind of decide if it's right or if it's what they should be doing is going and stopping and killing this guy. So that's pretty much the gist of it. There's some really great stuff in here, I think.
Yeah, like the opening splash page.
Oh, it's so good.
Spider-Man is kind of sticking himself to the corner of the ceiling over top of a bunch of these goons shooting. Or no, is it the cops?
No, these are Silvermane's like guys, these goons.
Right.
Because Spider-Man had webbed up the door previously, so they couldn't barge in. And yeah, so we have him like pinned up at the top, so he's not getting shot at. And the Spider-Man is like the words Spider-Man is behind him for that title on the wall.
So cool. Yes, again, Will Eisner-esque.
So cool. Great. Yeah, and then the of all the bullets like just bursting through the door, and the door is just crumbling behind it. Yeah, really, really great splash page. So then we jump into these guys bursting through the door, and Spider-Man is trying to take them all at once while this scientist is going and trying to like keep Silvermane alive. And they take him away, and they end up like encasing, like putting them in this like almost coffin-esque or like sarcophagus type of metal machine, and they it's like almost like an iron lung, like he's completely encased in this thing as they take him out and drive away in this ambulance.
Right.
And we do get like a quick little panel of the Kingpin.
Right.
Who's kind of laughing and enjoying this, that Spider-Man is fighting Silvermane as two enemies are at each other's throats. I think it's a nice little nod that we see Kingpin pulling the strings behind this whole thing.
Yes.
Like just with the one panel. He's not like a super important part of the story, but at least we know that like he's still lurking in the shadows, making sure all this is happening and going according to plan. I thought that was a really fun little cameo by him.
And also, one of my favorite scenes is when Spider-Man gets back to his apartment and he's like, you got to get out of this sweaty costume, get this film developed and over to the Daily Bugle, and start studying for my exams before I collapse for the night.
Yeah.
But then, snore. He just falls asleep on his desk.
Yeah, it just crashes.
I love it. That's classic Peter Parker right there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's back to Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah. So we see them show up, and we kind of see Dagger being kind of like beaten up about having just killed Silvermane, and like, kind of having this internal struggle of like, should I have done this? Like, did we really need to kill him? And then we see these guys in the alleyway.
Yeah, it's funny how no matter where they go, they just happen to stumble upon drug deals. But whatever, that's fine, right?
Right. So they go and they stop these guys. They drop down on them, and we cut away, so we don't really see what's going on. But we do get this really cool splash page of them like jumping down the alley. Dagger is like holding on to the staircase as she's shooting these daggers from her hands, and Cloak is like floating down, and he's got this like grimace as these guys are like
good.
they're like screaming and squinting as they're being hit by these light daggers. It's really fun.
Really good shot. It's almost like Sin City-esque the way that they're drawn. Right?
Yeah,
just in shadow. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, so then we cut back to the Daily Bugle, and Peter Parker is once again having fun with J. Jonah Jameson, who's all pissed off because there's no pictures of Silvermane. But of course, Peter Parker got some because he was there as Spider-Man, right? And so then he goes back on his way, and then we get one of the probably the coolest sequence in the whole book.
Oh, so great.
Where we see Peter Parker getting onto a bus, and the panels of him getting on the bus and then exiting it are intercut with these black panels and these word bubbles. Am I alive? Yes, open your eyes. Doctor, you've done it. But I'm still the same, still old. Yes, Silvermane, you're still old, but you're not the same. And it cuts back to this shot of Silvermane in a robotic body, okay, that I saw in the Marvel Universe Handbook when I was a kid. And I think this frickin' design is so cool. What do you think?
It's so great.
Yes.
This entire page is fantastic. Like you were saying at the beginning with those like thin black panels, like it looks like blinking, right? I'm assuming that's what it's trying to mimic.
Yeah.
So we see him kind of gain consciousness again, and we see the reflection of his face in the scientist's goggles, and the way that it's inked and sketched is really cool. Like, it's really rough, and there's some cool line work there. And then that like almost half page panel of Silvermane in this like robotic like cyborg body now is so cool. So really the only thing that's left of him is his face, and then it's all robot body, and then inside we can see his organs hooked up to these like metal tubes, like flying out of his chest and like running up his arms, and it's really cool. Such a fun design.
And if you can imagine, it's not quite like the Terminator where it's skeleton. Like, if you were to imagine, it's like not just skeleton, it's almost like skeleton plus tendons and muscles, and they're just made to look like all metallic. So it's a really cool design. And I also have to point out, do you remember the redesign of Brainiac from 1983? Are you familiar with Brainiac from Superman?
I do. Yes, I am familiar with Brainiac, but I don't remember the specific.
So Brainiac, as we all know, is a green-skinned villain with blonde hair or blonde facial hair. And in 1983, DC commissioned a redesign of Brainiac and Lex Luthor. And as far as I know, the Brainiac redesign from 83 was also done by Ed Hannigan. And it's a similar kind of vibe. I don't know if you remember, but he basically looked like, again, like a metallic skeleton, but with this weird big skull with this like kind of glass dome over his head.
I don't know if I'm familiar with that. I'll have to look that up.
Unfortunately, it only lasted a couple years because then DC rebooted everything with Crisis. But it was a really cool design, and I think they used it in the Superpowers toys in like 1985, 86. So it's really cool if you get a chance to look it up.
I'll definitely look that up after.
And then I also got to point out the next page, the shot of Silvermane holding up that big machine that was used in his Marvel Universe entry that I read as a kid. And so I've looked at that panel 1,000 times. Like, it's such a cool shot.
It's really great. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's huge too. It's like half the page vertically.
Right.
Which is pretty interesting. I don't think we really get too many of those. At least they don't like stand out a whole lot where it's like a whole half page vertically.
Good point.
But it really shows like the power and strength. The last issue we see him, he can barely lift up his head when he's like almost dying on his bed. And now, like, after being killed and brought back as a cyborg, he has all this strength and like way more power than he ever had before. And he lifts up this machine above his head and throws it with ease. It's so great. Yeah, and then we get this like close up shot of him. We can still see that like there's a lot of pain in the face too, like
right like well done.
Oh yeah, so great. So after that he bursts out the building and we cut back to Peter Parker in class, and he's talking to poor Deborah Whitman.
Yeah.
I actually kind of like this interaction.
Yeah.
I don't think Peter Parker was a jerk at all.
No.
But we definitely see that she really does care for him and is like so worried about him. At first, Peter is thinking that she's going to be upset about punching Biff, but she kind of starts talking, like almost like hinting at what's going on with him and Spider-Man.
Right, and I thought she was going to, but she didn't.
Right.
She didn't fess up, right? But oh well.
But yeah, so we see that she's like really worried.
And of course, we cut over to some black teenagers in a subway, and we know that the drug dealers because they're black. I mean, no, you know, it's kind of ridiculous because I think we've seen this anytime Cloak and Dagger are around, we suddenly have black supporting characters.
Right.
Always drug dealers, unfortunately. So
yeah, it's really
sign
weird.
of the times. Yeah, it's embarrassing, but I mean, pretty much all comic books were like that at the time. It doesn't make it right, but we can't judge them by modern standards. But it is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then Silvermane comes down and he encounters these guys and he wants to find out who's sold them out. And of course, one of the guys is like, "Cripes, the old geezer knows we spilled the beans." He actually says that as he's running away, which is kind of funny. So Silvermane is ripping steel girders off of the roof and throwing them at these guys, and then Spider-Man comes in to help out, and then him and Silvermane get into this fight. And then they're as the train is coming. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I really love some of these panels on this page. Digital 16.
Oh, okay.
16. Yeah. These like drug dealers are running away, we have Silvermane kind of like towering over them, ripping off that beam, and then the beam flies down and almost hits them. And then the third panel is like the background is completely red, and then all the characters in the beam are like black, and then they have like these white silhouettes that are kind of like shining on them as we see this arm like jut into frame and grab the first guy's like scruff of his shirt.
Right.
It's so great. I love that. It was like really like shocking and definitely told that story of how powerful and how quickly he was able to do this, and how absolutely just scared they were and close to death they were.
Yep.
So yeah, really great. And then again, like even the next page, this stuff is so good.
Yes. Him and Silvermane fighting in the dark. Then the train is coming, and then the train lights them up, so there's shadows all behind them. It's just excellent. Yeah,
and because Silvermane is all like chrome, when the light hits him, it like it's inked, so it's almost gold and like bright yellow. It really makes that like chrome seem shiny, and we see the light reflecting off of it. And then even like the train conductor inside, like this dramatic like underlit light. Yeah, it's so great.
I love it.
Yeah, there's some fun stuff here.
Yeah, definitely. And then they're fighting on top of the train, and then Cloak and Dagger come in and to intervene with the drug dealers, and then this is a really cool frickin' scene where the train is coming towards Cloak and Dagger, that's the train which carries... Oh, I'm doing the wrong voice. That is the train which carries Silvermane. But there's no engineer driving a Cloak. It's out of control and it's coming right at you. What does Cloak do? He opens up his cloak and he swallows the train. And the train goes right through him into darkness. And then it phases through him and comes out the other side. It's so freaking cool, eh? Right.
And I love that it like cuts back to the train as we see... Silvermane and Spider-Man fighting.
Right.
The lights. What happened to the lights? You wouldn't believe me if I told you. And then it cuts back to the exact mirror of the panel where he like swallows up the train in his cape. He releases it out the other side. It's so great.
Freaking cool. Yep.
Yeah. So fantastic. It's such a clever use of the power, and I thought this was great.
And this is only what three Cloak and Dagger appearances.
Yeah.
In. We're already getting creative use of their power. Like, what a great idea! Like, and that's the thing is like, modern readers may criticize some of these '80s comics for being a little bit cheesy or maybe written for kids, but just the creativity to come up with these powers is just amazing.
For sure.
I think I love it. So then Spider-Man gets the bright idea to hit the brakes on the subway, which finally ends up stopping it, right? And then Silvermane and Cloak are fighting, but Cloak has been weakened, right, because he overextended himself with sort of teleporting the train, so he's not much use. So then Dagger starts shooting him.
It's so smart to write that in, I think.
Right, exactly.
Putting them in that situation to use that cool power is one thing, but then having it like when he swallowed up the entire train and then spit it out through the cape. Like that's a really cool moment. But then on top of that, using that as a story point to make it so Dagger is the one that has to choose whether to kill Silvermane at the end. Because this entire time, Cloak has known like this is exactly what he thinks he should do and what's the right thing to do. And it's been Dagger that's been like really dealing with it and not knowing what to do. So making Cloak like incapacitated and having to force Dagger to make that decision on her own is such a smart way to tell that story.
Right.
So, yeah.
And then she decides, she's like, yes. And he has opened the path. She's like, I don't believe it, Silvermane. I don't believe it. Silvermane's accidentally collapsed the tunnel upon himself. Yes, and I was just doing Spider-Man's voice. Anyway, But then she's like, yes, and he opened a path to the light above. For that I'm grateful. With Cloak hurt, my power is halved. I am now restored. Then let that be your epitaph, girl child, for Silvermane still lives, and he's going to kill you. And then she says, no, you're not going to kill anyone ever again.
Oh,
and then
so
she
great.
Electrocutes him, right? But it actually kind of empowers him for a second, and we think he's okay, but then he collapses, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's short-circuited.
Oh, it's so great. And then as Spider-Man kind of confronts them and like grabs Dagger's shoulder, Cloak comes back and like swallows her up and they both disappear and we're left with this like sad Spider-Man as they fade into the night.
I love it. I love the ending. It's great.
Yeah,
again,
really great.
It's like it ends quickly, but it doesn't feel like rushed like a Denny O'Neil ending. This feels like a satisfying ending. What do you think?
Right. I think the reason is because the villain isn't defeated like in the last panel. Like I think this would actually happen, right? Where these vigilante heroes show up, they take care of this guy, and then they disappear immediately. So it's them kind of disappearing, and we're left with Spider-Man. Like, what just happened? Now I've got to deal with this, right? So it's I think kind of adds to it. I think if we had too much of Cloak and Dagger waiting around, it wouldn't feel like they're trying to get away or that they're afraid of the consequences.
Right. So. And actually, I forgot about there's an epilogue. I actually almost missed it when I was reading it the first time, but we do get like an epilogue of things kind of wrapping up with the subway and like the ambulance. But then we also cut back to Deborah Whitman, right?
Right.
And then she's like, either the boy I think I'm in love with is Spider-Man or I'm in more trouble than I thought.
Right.
So there's more to come with Deborah Whitman, right?
Yeah.
This whole Spidey subplot.
I'm definitely excited to see what her story ends up being because me
too.
I'm curious.
Right.
But this is a definite recommend. All three of the Cloak and Dagger issues that we've read from Spectacular Spider-Man have been absolutely fantastic.
Yep, I
think
agree.
Those three in particular have just been so good. The art is great. The stories are extremely well done. So I definitely recommend this one. And I think it's an all three recommend for the issues that we read this week too.
Yes, I think Spider-Man is hitting his stride. I mean, when we started in 1980, there was still some major rough spots, but now I think it's getting to the point where, it's like virtually every issue we're reading is good. So this is good. This is good stuff here, folks.
Yeah.
So that wraps up this week's episode. Next week, we will be reviewing an Amazing Spider-Man 233 with the return of the Tarantula, Marvel Team Up 122 with the Man-Thing, and Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, with no particular supervillain, but it looks like a really cool story about guns. So, so it'll be an interesting one.
Yeah.
And you can take it from here.
Sure, yeah. We want to keep this conversation going, so we want to hear what you guys think about the podcast and the issues that we're reading and talking about. So why don't you guys head over to Facebook or a Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave us a review and keep that conversation going. You could find us at the Comic Book Syndicate, or if you want to find us and talk to us on Twitter, you can find us at Comic Book Syndicate.
That's right. So this has been your favorite Bronze Age Spider-Man podcast. So until next Monday, this has been Here Comes the Spider-Cast.
All right. See you then.